Gigantic machinery that was the Roman legion, the Velites were a small but vital piece. And also, the most disposable. They were the youngest, the poorest, and those who were placed on the front line just before the real fighting began. Their mission? To harass the enemy, launch projectiles, and take the first hits. In modern terms, they were Rome's human shields. The Velites were part of the light infantry during the Republic, before the Roman army became professionalized. They did not have the prestige of the legionaries nor the protection of the heavy maniples. In fact, many did not even have armor. Their equipment was simple: a short sword, gladius, a small shield, parma, and several javelins, light javelins designed to harass the enemy from a distance. They were recruited from among the youngest and landless citizens. We are talking about young men who had barely reached the minimum military age, many of them without experience and without resources. But they were also agile, fast, and easily replaceable. On the battlefield, the Velites deployed in front of the army, like a cloud of irritating mosquitoes. They threw their javelins to break enemy formations or disorganize the most dangerous units. Like elephants or heavy cavalry, and then they would run away to make way for the heavy troops, Hastati, Princes, and Triarii. His role was as dangerous as it was necessary. And yet they rarely appear in heroic tales. They didn't conquer cities. They didn't make speeches. They just survived, or fell into oblivion. And you might ask yourself, how did someone like that fight? What hope did a boy with a javelin have against an enemy army? Velites did not wear armor. Not because of bravery, but because they couldn't afford it. While other Roman soldiers marched in bronze breastplates, greaves, and ornate helmets, the Velites wore only the bare minimum: a tunic, a small round shield called a parma made of wood and leather, and a simple bronze helmet, often decorated with a wolf skin to impress, and to at least make them look more intimidating than they were. And their main weapon? The javelin, a lightweight javelin designed to be thrown from a distance. They were not like the heavy pylons of the legionaries, but more manageable weapons that allowed them to move quickly. Each Velite carried between 5 and 7 javelins. The tactic was simple: get close enough to the enemy to launch their missiles, cause as much chaos as possible, and then run away before they could get over them. And it was not just a saying. These young fighters often faced the most brutal of the enemy: war elephants, chariots, hostile cavalry, or uncontrolled barbarian troops. They opened the fight, and often did not live to see the end. But their role was not just to be cannon fodder. In well-coordinated battles, Velites were the first layer of a complex strategy. Their mobility made them useful for scouting, harassing from a distance, testing enemy morale, and even finishing off the wounded after heavy legionaries had passed by. They weren't useless. They were a tactical tool. Only Rome considered them as functional as they were disposable. And this is where the big question comes in. Were they silent heroes, or simply expendable? That the Velites were human shields is not an exaggerated metaphor, it is quite literal. Imagine entering the battlefield knowing you'll be the first to see the enemy, the first to attack, and probably the first to die. That was the fate of the Velites. In each clash, they deployed in front of the Roman army like a thin line that had to hold out long enough to make way for the real heavyweights. And they weren't just facing soldiers. On many occasions, Velites were the only line of defense against war elephants, used by enemies such as Pyrrhus or Hannibal. These animals could destroy entire formations, so the Romans threw the Velites as bait. They would rush to the front, throw javelins at them to scare or wound them, and then run away hoping the elephants would get out of control before reaching the legions. Did it work? Sometimes it did. Sometimes not. And not to mention clashes with enemy chariots or heavy cavalry, the Velites had to disorder them, break their formation, and then sacrifice himself if necessary to slow them down until the main line was ready. The concept behind its use was brutally pragmatic. It is better to lose inexperienced young people than trained legionaries. And that tells us a lot about how the Roman military machine fought. Now, not everything was misery and death. There was one thing Rome did offer the Velites: a chance. A chance to rise. Velite was playing roulette with life. But for some, that dangerous front line wasn't just a punishment, but an opportunity. In Republican Rome, the army was not only an instrument of war, it was also a social step. And although the Velites started at the bottom, there was a way out: merit on the battlefield. If you survived enough campaigns, if you demonstrated courage, obedience, and skill, you could rise to the rank of Hastatus, a better equipped and more highly regarded heavy infantryman. And from there, keep moving up: Principes, Triarii, and even, with luck and years, you could become a centurion. For young men without land or inheritance, the army was one of the few avenues to glory, loot, and status. Rome rewarded courage, but only if you lived to tell the tale. Of course, for every Velite that rose, there were dozens that simply disappeared, buried in distant fields, nameless, unrecognized. They were replaced by other young people who were just as desperate, just as expendable. And yet, many accepted it. Because in a society that venerated military virtue and despised passivity, dying for Rome even as a Velite was better than doing nothing for it. But over time, this system, so marked by social class and personal merit, began to change. And one day, the Velites simply disappeared from the army. For almost 2 centuries, the Velites were a key piece in the Roman Republican army. But suddenly, they disappeared. What happened to them? The answer lies in the military reform of Gaius Marius, around 107 BC, a turning point in the history of the Roman army. Until then, only citizens who could afford their own equipment could enlist in the various units according to their social class. But Mario changed the rules of the game. He opened the army to the poorest, provided them with state weapons, eliminated the old class structure, and created a professional legion. The result? Roles like that of the Velites no longer made sense. Troops became more homogeneous, with standardized training and equipment. The mobility and harassment previously carried out by the Velites was now the responsibility of other, more specialized units, such as light auxiliaries or scouts. Furthermore, in a professional army, there was no point in throwing inexperienced young people around as cannon fodder. Now they were all full-time soldiers, with more uniform training and a life dedicated to military service. Thus, little by little, the Velites ceased to be mentioned in the records. They vanished like many other transitory units in Roman military history. No ceremonies, no tributes, no epic tombs. They simply stopped being necessary. And with them, a stage also came to an end. That of the poor boys who risked their lives for a small shield, a javelin, and a dream of advancement in the most ruthless machinery of the ancient world.
The year is 390 BC. The air hangs heavy with the stench of defeat and the lingering terror of a shattered army. Rome, the burgeoning power of the Italian peninsula, lies in ashes. The Gallic sack of Rome, the catastrophic aftermath of the Battle of the Allia River, reverberates through the very foundations of the nascent republic. This humiliating defeat, a brutal awakening, exposed a critical vulnerability in Rome's military doctrine, a vulnerability that demanded radical reform. Why had the seemingly invincible Roman army, equipped with a traditional phalanx formation, suffered such a devastating blow? The answer lies in the rigid inflexibility of the hoplite phalanx itself. For generations, the Roman army had mirrored its Greek counterparts, adopting the heavily armored hoplite phalanx. This formation, a dense wall of spearmen, had proven effective against many adversaries. But against the fluid, aggressive tactics of the Gauls, it proved to be a crippling weakness. The Allia River ran red with Roman blood, a testament to the phalanx's inability to adapt to the irregular terrain and the relentless mobility of the Gallic warriors. Imagine the scene: a disciplined yet immobile mass of Roman soldiers, their shields locked, their spears extended, becoming trapped and slaughtered in the chaotic melee, unable to maneuver, unable to respond to the flanking movements of the nimble Gauls. The tightly packed ranks, designed for steadfast defense, became a slaughterhouse. The psychological impact on Rome was profound. The very notion of Roman invincibility was shattered. The hoplites' heavy armor, while offering excellent protection, also severely hampered mobility. The rigid formation, while effective on level ground against similarly structured armies, was utterly vulnerable to an enemy that could exploit its inflexibility. The Gauls, with their superior mobility and adaptability, effectively circumvented the Roman phalanx, dismantling it piecemeal. The defeat of the Alia was not merely a military setback. It was a strategic and tactical catastrophe that exposed a fundamental flaw in Rome's military thinking. It was a brutal lesson, etched in blood and fire, that called for a complete overhaul of Roman military strategy. From the ashes of defeat rose a man who would forever alter the course of Roman military history, Marcus Furius Camillus. A figure shrouded in both myth and historical reality, Camillus possessed a keen understanding of the flaws inherent in the existing system. He recognized that the rigid, inflexible hoplite phalanx was ill-suited to diverse and often unpredictable warfare faced by Rome. His response was not merely a tactical adjustment, but a fundamental restructuring of the Roman army. Camillus spearheaded a radical military reform, discarding the rigid phalanx in favor of a more versatile and adaptable system, a system that would ultimately pave the way for Roman dominance throughout the Mediterranean. Central to this reform was the creation of a new infantry unit, the Hastati. The Hastati, young men of the prime fighting age, formed the vanguard of the new Roman legions. Unlike the heavily armored hoplites, the Hastati were equipped with lighter armor, allowing for greater mobility and flexibility on the battlefield. They were armed with the asta, a relatively short spear, effective in close-quarters combat, but allowing for greater agility than the longer spears of the hoplites. Their lighter armor, coupled with their shorter spears, allowed for superior maneuverability, making them ideal for fluid and dynamic engagements that characterized warfare in the Italian peninsula. The Hastati were not merely a replacement for the hoplites. They represented a new approach to warfare, one that emphasized adaptability, flexibility, and combined arms tactics. The creation of the Hastati marked not only a shift in military technology and organization, but a decisive turning point in Roman military doctrine, a testament to resilience and adaptability of Rome itself, forged in the crucible of defeat and redefined by the innovative genius of Marcus Furius Camillus. The lessons learned at the Alia River would forever shape the Roman legions, transforming them into the most formidable fighting force of the ancient world. How did the Romans overcome the inflexibility of the phalanx, that seemingly impenetrable wall of spears that had dominated warfare for centuries? The answer lies not in superior weaponry, nor in unmatched individual prowess, but in a revolutionary tactical innovation, the quincunx formation. For generations, the Greek phalanx, a tightly packed formation of heavily armed hoplites, had reigned supreme. Its strength resided in its unwavering front, a bristling hedge of spears capable of repelling even the most ferocious assault. Yet, this very strength was also its Achilles heel. The rigid, unbroken lines of phalanx were notoriously inflexible, maneuvering on uneven terrain, adapting to changing battlefield conditions, or even reacting to a flanking maneuver, proved incredibly difficult, bordering on impossible. A single breach in a line could unravel the entire formation, leading to catastrophic rout. The limitations of the linear formation became increasingly apparent as warfare evolved. The battlefield was rarely a flat, open plain. It was a chaotic landscape of hills, valleys, rivers, and obstacles. The phalanx, in its unwavering rigidity, was ill-equipped to negotiate such complexities. Its slow reaction time left it vulnerable to agile enemies who could exploit its inherent limitations. Imagine a phalanx attempting to scale a hill, its ranks breaking and reforming with agonizing slowness, a prime target for enemy missiles and flanking attacks. Or envision a logistical nightmare deploying such a formation in a dense forest, its dense ranks quickly becoming entangled and immobilized. The Roman legions, facing these formidable Greek and other adversaries, found themselves forced to adapt. Their initial formations, while effective in certain contexts, lacked the strategic flexibility needed to consistently defeat the phalanx. The legion's early deployments often mirrored the linear rigidity of their enemies, proving equally vulnerable to the same limitations. It became clear that a new approach was necessary, a formation that could combine the strength of a cohesive unit with the agility to respond to the unpredictable nature of battle. This need for tactical fluidity led to the development and refinement of the Quinkings formation. Unlike the unbroken lines of the phalanx, the Quinkings deployed its units in a staggered pattern. Imagine a 5x5 grid, with the center square occupied and the 4 surrounding squares forming the corners. This arrangement, repeated across the Legion's ranks, created a flexible, adaptable battle line. Its inherent strength lay in its overlapping ranks and the ability of individual maniples, smaller units within the Legion, to maneuver independently while maintaining overall cohesion. The advantages of this system were profound. The Quinkings allowed for more effective use of terrain. Maniples could easily deploy on uneven ground, adapting to the contours of battlefield, while still maintaining a strong defensive line. Its inherent flexibility allowed for swift responses to enemy maneuvers, such as flanking attacks or feigned retreats. Individual units could shift position, closing gaps or reinforcing threatened areas, without disrupting the entire formation's integrity. The staggered ranks also offered significant advantages in melee combat. The overlapping nature of the formation presented multiple lines of defense, and the spacing allowed for superior spear and swordplay. The Quinkings was not simply a different arrangement of soldiers. It was a fundamentally different approach to warfare, prioritizing adaptability and maneuverability without sacrificing defensive strength. The adoption of the Quinkings marked a turning point in Roman military history. It was a critical factor in the Legion's success against a variety of opponents, allowing them to overcome the seemingly invincible phalanx and ultimately reshape the course of ancient warfare. The Quinkings was not merely a tactical innovation. It was a testament to the Romans' pragmatism and their capacity for adaptation in the face of formidable challenges, a lesson in military evolution that resonates even today. Was it a blunder or a brilliant strategy that the Roman Hastati, the backbone of the Legion's youthful fighting force, entered battle with relatively light protection? The question resonates through the centuries, a testament to the enduring fascination with Roman military might and its surprising tactical choices. Unlike their heavily armored Greek hoplite counterparts, who presented a formidable wall of bronze and muscle, the Roman Hastati of the Republican era relied primarily on a simple tunic, often supplemented by a rudimentary jerkin, and a large, rectangular scutum shield. Their protection, compared to the impressive panoply of the hoplite, seemed almost minimal. This stark contrast immediately prompts the question, why? Did Rome knowingly sacrifice the protection of its young soldiers on the altar of some greater strategic advantage? The disparity in equipment is undeniable, and the perceived vulnerability of the Hastati begs for an explanation that goes beyond simple oversight. A closer examination reveals a far more nuanced reality. The relative lack of heavy armor amongst the Hastati wasn't a sign of Roman inadequacy, but rather a deliberate strategic decision deeply rooted in the realities of Roman warfare and socioeconomic conditions. To understand this choice, we must analyze several interconnected factors. Firstly, the sheer scale of the Roman army demanded an economical approach to equipment. The legions were massive, comprising thousands of men. Equipping each soldier with the equivalent of hoplite armor, including a bronze breastplate, greaves, and helmet, would have placed an unbearable burden on the Roman treasury. The cost of bronze alone would have been prohibitive, impacting both the affordability of maintaining a large standing army and the ability to quickly raise new legions in times of war. The simpler tunic and scutum represented a far more cost-effective solution. Furthermore, the economic disparities within the Roman Republic would have made extensive armor provision impossible. Wealthy individuals might have afforded better protection, but many Hastati were drawn from the ranks of the lower classes. Providing them with expensive armor would have been financially untenable, particularly when the legionary system aimed for broad inclusivity. Secondly, the Roman military doctrine emphasized maneuverability and flexibility. The Hastati were intended to be the shock troops, charging aggressively into the enemy lines. Heavy armor, while providing exceptional protection, severely restricted movement. The hoplite phalanx, for example, was famously slow and cumbersome, vulnerable to flanking maneuvers. The Roman system, in contrast, relied on speed, agility, and adaptable formations. The Hastati's relatively light equipment allowed for greater maneuverability on the battlefield, enabling them to rapidly shift positions and exploit openings in enemy lines. This is crucial to understanding the effectiveness of their strategy. Their mobility allowed them to overcome the limitations of individual protection through collective action. The protection of the shield wall became paramount. Thirdly, the effectiveness of the Roman military system cannot be divorced from the strategic context. Roman legions fought in a variety of terrains, from the open fields of Italy to the rough hills and forests of Gaul. Heavy hoplite armor would have been cumbersome and less effective in such varied landscapes, hindering their effectiveness far more than it would have benefited them. The Roman scutum and its ability to shield the soldier became a vital form of protection, while enabling sufficient speed and freedom of movement. In conclusion, the apparent lack of heavy armor amongst the Hastati wasn't a sign of military weakness, but rather a carefully considered strategic choice born from necessity, pragmatism, and innovative tactical thinking. It was a reflection of the Roman army's exceptional adaptability and its ability to deploy its manpower effectively, despite the constraints of cost and geography. Their success on the battlefield underscores the fact that military effectiveness doesn't always reside in the weight of armor, but in the cohesion and skill of the fighting force, and in the intelligent adaptation of its strategy to the prevailing circumstances. The Roman Hastati, with their seemingly light equipment, stand as a testament to this enduring truth. How did the Hastati, the backbone of the Roman legions, protect their heads in the brutal maelstrom of battle? The answer lies not in the romanticized imagery of gleaming, full-plate armor, but in a deceptively simple, yet remarkably effective piece of military equipment: the Montefortino helmet. The Roman soldier of the Republican era, particularly the young Hastati forming the first line of attack, faced a grim reality. Full body armor was prohibitively expensive and cumbersome, a luxury afforded only to the elite. Their survival on the battlefield, amidst the clash of swords, the hail of javelins, and the crushing weight of enemy formations, hinged upon a single, crucial piece of equipment: the bronze helmet. A blow to the head could be instantly fatal, rendering even the most skilled warrior helpless. The need for a robust, yet practical, head covering was paramount. The Montefortino helmet, named after its discovery near Montefortino, Italy, embodies this pragmatic approach to military technology. It was not a product of elaborate artistry or ostentatious display, but a testament to Roman ingenuity in balancing effectiveness with ease of mass production. Its design, while seemingly straightforward, reveals a deep understanding of both metallurgy and battlefield dynamics. Crafted from bronze, a readily available material that allowed for relatively simple casting techniques, the Montefortino helmet demonstrated remarkable durability. The slightly domed skull cap offered protection against glancing blows, whilst the relatively flat cheek plates, though offering less protection to the sides of the face than later designs, allowed for a wider field of vision, a crucial advantage in the chaotic melee of close-quarters combat. The helmet's relatively simple construction, employing relatively few pieces, further facilitated mass production. This was vital for equipping the legions, which often numbered tens of thousands of men. The design's efficiency ensured that even the youngest and least experienced Hastati, those forming the vanguard of the Roman war machine, could be adequately protected. This was not merely a matter of individual safety, but a strategic necessity. The effectiveness of the Roman army depended on the resilience and fighting capacity of its frontline troops. The loss of a significant number of Hastati in the opening stages of a battle could cripple the entire legion's tactical capability. The relatively shallow neck guard, often seen on Montefortino helmets, while perhaps offering less protection than later, more elaborate designs, also minimized weight and restricted movement less, allowing for greater flexibility and maneuverability. The pragmatic simplicity of this design speaks volumes about the Roman military's focus on functional practicality. The Montefortino helmet wasn't meant to be a work of art, but a reliable instrument of survival, a testament to the Roman understanding that military effectiveness often stemmed from efficient, mass-produced, and robust equipment. Its widespread adoption as the standard helmet for the Hastati underlines its crucial role in the success of the Roman legions, contributing significantly to their dominance on the battlefields of antiquity. The seemingly simple bronze cap was, in essence, a crucial component in the formidable Roman war machine. How did the Hastati breach the enemy lines and carve a path to victory? The question resonates across centuries, echoing through the dust and blood of countless Roman triumphs. Their success wasn't a matter of brute force alone, but a carefully orchestrated dance of discipline and adaptation. The Hastati, young men of the Roman legion, formed the crucial second line of battle, the Acies. They were not the elite, the seasoned veterans who comprised the Triarii, nor were they the skirmishers, the lightly armed Velites, who harassed the enemy from a distance. No, the Hastati bore the brunt of the initial impact. Following the initial skirmishing phase, which often left the enemy fatigued and their formations disrupted, the Hastati would be the first to engage the enemy's main battle line, absorbing the full force of their attack. This placed them in a perilous position, facing the enemy's strongest warriors in a direct confrontation, often suffering heavy casualties in the process. Their success or failure would frequently dictate the outcome of the entire battle. The effectiveness of the Hastati lay not in individual prowess, but in the unparalleled flexibility and discipline of the Roman legionary system. Their armament, the gladius, a short, thrusting sword, and the pilum, a heavy javelin, was strategically chosen. The pilum's design was ingenious. Its iron shaft, designed to bend upon impact, rendered the enemy's shields useless and hampered their ability to effectively use their own spears. This initial volley of pila, delivered with precision and devastating effect, often broke the enemy's initial charge. But the Roman system extended far beyond weaponry. The Hastati's success relied heavily on their deployment in a tightly packed formation known as the Manipulus. These units of approximately 120 men, each commanded by a centurio, were highly mobile and adaptable. Unlike the rigid phalanxes of their enemies, Roman units could maneuver with remarkable speed and precision, shifting their formations to counter enemy attacks, exploiting weaknesses and flanking maneuvers as needed. This adaptability was essential in dealing with the unpredictable nature of ancient warfare. A superior enemy force might launch a concentrated assault on one section of the line. The maniples of Hastati could swiftly reorient themselves, reinforcing the weaker points and pushing the enemy back. The centurions played a vital role in this adaptability. Their experience and tactical acumen guided their maniples, ensuring the maintenance of cohesion and discipline even amidst the chaos of battle. Effective communication, through signals and shouts, coordinated the movements of individual maniples, creating a responsive and fluid battle line capable of reacting swiftly to changes on the field. The Hastati's ability to maintain formation, even under intense pressure, was crucial in preventing the catastrophic collapse of the entire Roman line. Their disciplined retreat, if necessary, ensured that they could regroup and reform, preserving their fighting strength for a decisive counterattack later in the battle. Ultimately, the story of the Hastati is a testament to the power of military organization and strategic innovation. They were not invincible, they suffered heavy losses. But their flexibility, discipline, and the combined effect of their tactics and armament often enabled them to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds, laying the groundwork for the broader Roman victories that shaped the ancient world. Their success wasn't a simple matter of strength. It was a demonstration of the effectiveness of a finely tuned military machine, a machine that relied on the coordinated efforts of highly trained soldiers, operating within a highly adaptable system. Their legacy lies not just in their courage, but also in the lessons of strategic brilliance that they leave for us today. Why did the Hastati disappear? The question, seemingly simple, unravels a complex tapestry of Roman military evolution. The answer lies not in defeat or incompetence, but in the very success of the system they embodied. The Hastati, the youthful backbone of the early Roman legions, were a crucial element in the Republic's rise to dominance. But their distinct role, a crucial cog in a larger machine, would eventually become obsolete, a testament to the adaptability and inherent dynamism of the Roman military. The Roman army, a force that would ultimately conquer a vast empire, wasn't static. It underwent continuous adaptation, reflecting the shifting political and strategic landscapes it encountered. The early Republican army, relying on citizen soldiers, was organized around a tripartite system: Hastati, Principes, and Triarii. Each unit held a distinct place on the battlefield, reflecting age, experience, and equipment. The Hastati, young men serving their first campaign, formed the vanguard, a wave of youthful energy and relatively inexpensive manpower. Their primary role was to absorb the initial shock of the enemy assault, wearing down their opposition before the more experienced cohorts moved forward. This system, effective against the relatively less sophisticated armies of early Rome's adversaries, was gradually superseded. As Roman wars intensified and the scale of conflict expanded, the need for a more uniformly trained and equipped fighting force became evident. The complexities of large-scale campaigns, involving diverse terrains and foes, outpaced the effectiveness of the tripartite structure. The distinctions between Hastati, Principes, and Triarii, while once crucial, began to hinder the army's overall cohesion and flexibility. The gradual shift towards a professionalized, more uniform legion was a process that spanned centuries, marked by reforms introduced by prominent figures like Marius. Marius' reforms, implemented during a period of significant military and political instability, profoundly altered the nature of the Roman army. The reliance on citizen soldiers gave way to a system based on professional soldiers, serving for extended periods and earning their living through military service. This professionalization demanded standardization in training, equipment, and tactical deployment, rendering the tripartite system redundant. The distinctions between the different ranks blurred as all legionaries received similar training and equipment. The Hastati, as a distinct unit, eventually vanished. But the disappearance of the Hastati doesn't signify a failure. Their role was instrumental in the early successes of the Roman Republic, forging the foundation upon which the later, more powerful and adaptable legions were built. The experience gained from their service, the rigorous training, the battlefield discipline, and the development of effective tactical formations serve as a cornerstone for future military doctrines. The Hastati's contribution lies not in their prolonged existence as a specific unit, but in their crucial role in the evolution of the Roman military. They were the proving ground, the crucible that forged the legions into the unparalleled fighting force that would shape the destiny of the Mediterranean world. Their legacy is not etched in stone monuments, but in the very fabric of the Roman army's enduring success, a legacy that transcends their eventual absorption into a more unified and professionalized military machine. They were the pioneers, the first wave that paved the way for the Roman military's legendary dominance, and their sacrifice and contribution should not be overlooked. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of adaptation and the importance of evolution in military history. Who were these elite soldiers, the Triarii, and what set them apart within the formidable Roman army? Their name echoes through the centuries, synonymous with stoic defense and last-ditch resilience. To understand their significance, we must delve into the very foundations of Roman military organization, a world far removed from the legions we often envision. The Triarii represented the lingering embers of an older, more segmented military system, a structure gradually giving way to a more unified and standardized Roman fighting force. Before the rise of legendary figures like Scipio Africanus, and even before the Punic Wars reshaped the Mediterranean, the Roman army was a patchwork of citizen soldiers, divided by wealth and experience. This system, while effective in its time, faced inherent limitations. As Rome expanded its territorial control and encountered more sophisticated enemies, the need for greater cohesion and efficiency became increasingly apparent. The Triarii, as the rear guard and the most experienced of these citizen levies, embodied both the strengths and the weaknesses of this archaic structure. They represented a link to the past, a tradition of steadfast defense, but also hinted at the need for modernization. The very foundations upon which their role was built were beginning to shift. The pivotal figure in this transformation, the architect of a more robust and adaptable Roman military machine, was Marcus Furius Camillus, A renowned general and statesman, Camillus is credited with reorganizing the Roman army, establishing a new hierarchy based on age, wealth, and battlefield experience. This reorganization, occurring in the early 4th century BC, was not merely a cosmetic change. It redefined the roles and responsibilities of each class of soldier within the legionary structure. Camillus understood that a successful army needed more than just numbers. It required carefully orchestrated deployment of its manpower, maximizing the strengths of each individual and creating a synergistic fighting force. Within this new framework, the Triarii were elevated to a position of unparalleled importance. They were no longer just the oldest soldiers. They were specifically chosen from the wealthiest citizens, those capable of affording high-quality armor and weaponry. This economic status wasn't just about equipment. It reflected a certain level of social standing and, arguably, a degree of vested interest in the protection of the Republic. Men of property had more to lose, making them inherently more motivated to defend their land and their way of life. These men, the Triarii, were veterans of countless campaigns, possessing a deep understanding of tactics, battlefield awareness, and the crucial art of maintaining discipline under pressure. Their experience was invaluable, providing a bedrock of resilience and tactical acumen that permeated the entire legion. Their presence on the battlefield was not merely symbolic. It was a tangible assurance, a guarantee that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Roman line would hold. They were the last line of defense, the rock against which the enemy's tide would break. Their contribution, though often invoked only in moments of dire need, was fundamental to the overall success of the Roman military enterprise, solidifying their legacy as one of the most respected and feared soldier classes in Roman history. They became a symbol of Roman grit, discipline, and the unwavering resolve to prevail, no matter the cost. The phrase ad triarios redis, it has come to the Triarii, became a proverb, signifying a desperate situation where all other options had failed, and only the most experienced and resolute could turn the tide of battle. Their legacy was thus enshrined not just in military annals, but in the very fabric of Roman language and culture. The story of Roman military prowess is often told through tales of legionary grit and tactical innovation. But behind the bravado of the front lines, a silent force stood ready, a force rarely deployed, yet profoundly important. These were the Triarii, the veterans of the legions, the stoic backbone of Roman armies. To understand their significance, we must first grasp the fundamental principles of Roman military organization. The maniple system, a revolutionary departure from earlier, less flexible formations, divided the legion into 3 lines: the Hastati, the Principes, and finally, the Triarii. The Hastati, young and eager, formed the first line, their role one of aggressive engagement, softening the enemy and testing their resolve. Behind them stood the Principes, seasoned veterans in their prime, ready to exploit any breakthroughs or bolster faltering attacks. But what happened when the Hastati faltered? What happened when the Principes were unable to turn the tide? This is where the Triarii entered the equation, their presence dictated by the gravity of the situation. Consider the chaos of ancient warfare, clashing shields, the roar of battle cries, the relentless push and pull of men locked in deadly combat. The front lines were brutal, a whirlwind of steel and fury. Fatigue, casualties, and unforeseen circumstances could break the resolve of even the most experienced soldiers. If the Hastati and Principes were repulsed, the Roman army faced a critical juncture. Panic could set in, a rout could begin, and the entire legion could crumble. It was in this moment of extreme peril that the Triarii were called upon. Their deployment was not a simple reinforcement. It was a signal, a declaration that the battle had reached a critical stage. The phrase, residential ad triarios venit, meaning it has come down to the Triarii, became a proverb in Roman society, signifying a desperate situation, a last resort. The very act of calling up the Triarii was a strategic decision, a calculated risk. It admitted that the initial assaults had failed, but it also demonstrated the unwavering commitment of the Roman command to victory. Unlike the Hastati and Principes who fought with the gladius, the short sword ideal for close-quarters combat, the Triarii were armed with the asta, a long thrusting spear. This weapon, requiring open-order formations, was a remnant of an earlier era of Roman warfare. Its very presence spoke a tradition of unwavering discipline and a commitment to steadfast defense. Imagine the psychological impact on both sides. The Roman soldiers, demoralized by the failure of their comrades, would see the Triarii forming their line, their large shields and long spears presenting an impenetrable wall. This sight served as a potent symbol of resilience, a reminder that the fight was far from over, that Rome would not yield. Conversely, the enemy, perhaps emboldened by their initial success, would face a completely different challenge. The Hastati and Principes had been mobile and aggressive, their short swords designed for rapid attacks. Now, they faced a disciplined line of veterans, bristling with spears, presenting a formidable obstacle. The momentum of their attack would be blunted, their formations disrupted. The Triarii were not simply a reserve force. They were a strategic anchor, a point of stability in the midst of chaos. Their presence allowed the Roman commanders time to reorganize, to redeploy remaining forces, and to launch a counterattack. The Triarii could hold the line, buy precious time, and provide the opportunity for a renewed assault. In essence, they were the safety net beneath the trapeze act of Roman warfare. The effectiveness of the Triarii stemmed not only from their equipment and training, but also from their experience. Composed of seasoned veterans, often older men who had served for many years in legions, they had witnessed the horrors of war firsthand. They understood the ebb and flow of battle, the importance of discipline, and the critical role of maintaining formation. Their experience instilled in them a steely resolve, a refusal to break, even in the face of overwhelming odds. While direct accounts of Triarii engagements are scarce, their reputation speaks volumes. Their mere presence on the battlefield could be enough to deter the enemy or to shore up the morale of wavering Roman troops. Their commitment to holding the line, their refusal to yield, made them a force to be reckoned with. The respect accorded to the Triarii extended beyond the battlefield. In Roman society, they represented the virtues of steadfastness, discipline, and experience. They were a symbol of Rome's commitment to defending its territory and its citizens. The very phrase residential ad triarios venit served as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, Rome possessed the strength and the will to persevere. Therefore, the Triarii were more than just soldiers. They were an embodiment of Roman values. They were the last line of defense, not just against the enemy, but against defeat itself. Their presence on the battlefield was a testament to the resilience of the Roman spirit, a declaration that Rome would not fall easily. It was this reputation, forged in the fires of countless battles, that made them a truly feared and respected force in the ancient world, a force whose impact reverberated far beyond the immediate context of the battlefield. How were they equipped to withstand the enemy onslaught? The late Roman Republic, a crucible of constant warfare, demanded soldiers who could not only fight, but endure. Among the ranks of the legion, the Triarii, veterans hardened by years of service, formed the final, unwavering line of defense. They represented a strategic reserve, a human bulwark against disaster. But what made these men so formidable? What distinguished them from their younger, less experienced comrades? The answer lies, in large part, in the superior armaments and equipment they possessed. While the Hastati and Principes, the younger legionaries, might skirmish and engage in initial assaults, the Triarii were intended to hold, to break the enemy's momentum at the point of critical failure. Their equipment reflected this purpose, an investment in quality and protection far exceeding that of their younger counterparts. It was a symbol of their veteran status, a testament to their experience, and a calculated bet on their survival. The Triarii bore expensive armor and equipment designed to resist the fiercest attacks. But was it enough to make them invincible? The answer, of course, is no. No soldier is truly invincible. But the investment in the Triarii's equipment dramatically increased their survivability and, crucially, their effectiveness in the desperate moments when a legion teetered on the brink of collapse. Their armor, while offering unparalleled protection for its time, came at a significant cost. This expense, coupled with a demanding training regime required to effectively wield their specialized weaponry, ensured that only seasoned veterans, Men who had proven their worth on the battlefield were entrusted with the role of Triarius. The vulnerability of any soldier, regardless of equipment, resided in the human element. Fatigue, fear, and the ever-present possibility of a lucky blow. The Triarii, despite their superior arms, were not immune to these factors. Their courage, however, bolstered by their confidence in their equipment and their unwavering loyalty to the Republic, often proved decisive. From the corazza musculata to the Italo-Corinthian helmet and their asta spear, their equipment reflected their status and their preparation for war. Let us delve into the specifics of the Triarius equipment. Perhaps the most visually striking piece of their panoply was the corazza musculata, a sculpted breastplate mimicking the idealized physique of a Greek hero. While some Triarii likely wore the corazza musculata, its prohibitive cost meant that many relied on more practical alternatives. These alternatives included the lorica hamata, a mail shirt constructed from interlocking iron rings, providing excellent flexibility and protection against slashing blows, or the lorica squamata, a scale armor constructed from overlapping metal scales sewn onto a fabric backing. The choice likely depended on the individual Triarius wealth, preference, and availability. Regardless of the specific type, the armor provided crucial defense against the swords, spears, and axes of Rome's enemies. To protect their head, a vital target in any battle, the Triarii often wore a helmet of Italo-Corinthian design. This helmet, evolving from earlier Greek forms, offered comprehensive protection for the face and head, with cheek pieces that could be drawn down for added security. Though cumbersome, the Italo-Corinthian helmet instilled a sense of invulnerability and provided crucial protection from crushing blows. Later variations included cheek pieces that offered greater visibility without sacrificing defense. Unlike the Hastati and Principes, who favored the gladius hispaniensis for close-quarters combat, the Triarii retained the asta, a long, heavy spear. This weapon, a relic of earlier Roman warfare, was perfectly suited for their role as a defensive line. The asta allowed them to engage the enemy from a greater distance, disrupting their formations and preventing them from closing to inflict maximum damage. The weight and length of the asta demanded considerable strength and skill to wield effectively, a testament to the Triarii's veteran status. They were masters of its use, able to brace themselves and deliver devastating blows that could shatter shields and unseat opponents. Completing their ensemble were a large, oval shield known as the scutum, which provided crucial protection against missile weapons and close-quarters attacks. This shield, often reinforced with metal bosses, served as a mobile barrier, allowing the Triarii to form a virtually impenetrable wall. They also carried a gladius for close-quarters fighting if their asta was broken or lost, and a pugio, a short dagger, for a last-ditch defense. The equipment of the Triarii was more than just a collection of weapons and armor. It was a statement. It represented the best that the Roman Republic could offer, a tangible symbol of the value placed on experience and resilience. It was a testament to the importance of these veteran soldiers in the defense of Rome, a calculated investment in their ability to withstand the most brutal assaults and, ultimately, to secure victory. While not guaranteeing invincibility, the superior armaments of the Triarii undeniably made them a force to be reckoned with, a critical component of the Roman war machine, and a final, formidable barrier against utter defeat. They stood as a bulwark, not invincible, but profoundly and purposefully well-equipped. The story of the Roman military is one of constant adaptation and innovation. Nowhere is this clearer than in the dramatic shift in battlefield tactics that occurred between the early Republic and the period of Roman dominance. Understanding this evolution is key to grasping the true power of the Roman war machine and the changing role of its constituent units, particularly the veteran Triarii. But to appreciate the quincunx, we must first understand what it replaced: the phalanx. Before the Marian reforms and even before the Second Punic War, the Roman army, at its core, resembled that of its Greek neighbors, particularly the Etruscans. It relied on a heavily armed infantry formation known as the phalanx. Imagine ranks upon ranks of heavily armored men, their large, circular shields forming a near-impenetrable wall. Each soldier held a long spear, the asta projecting outwards to ward off enemies. This formation was designed for a frontal assault, a crushing advance intended to break the enemy line through sheer weight and discipline. In theory, the phalanx was a formidable force. Its cohesion and mass firepower could overwhelm less organized opponents. However, the reality on the battlefield proved far more complex. The phalanx was fundamentally inflexible. Its effectiveness depended on maintaining a perfectly even front, requiring flat, open ground. Any terrain irregularity, a hillock, a ditch, even particularly dense thicket, could disrupt the lines, creating vulnerabilities that a savvy enemy could exploit. The disaster of the Battle Valley in 390 BC serves as a stark reminder of the phalanx's limitations. Facing the invading Gauls, the Roman army, still largely organized along phalangite lines, was utterly routed. Accounts suggest that the Gauls exploited the uneven ground along the Allia River, breaking the Roman lines and causing widespread panic and carnage. This catastrophic defeat wasn't merely a loss. It was a wake-up call. The rigidity of the phalanx had been exposed, and the Republic's very survival hung in the balance. The defeat at Allia forced a painful but necessary period of self-reflection. Roman military thinkers began to analyze the shortcomings of their current system. They recognized that the closed order, inflexible nature of the phalanx was a significant liability in the varied terrain of Italy and beyond. They needed a system that allowed for greater maneuverability and adaptability. This realization spurred a gradual but transformative shift in Roman military organization. The phalanx was dismantled, and in its place emerged a new tactical formation, one that would define Roman military success for centuries to come. The Manipular Legion deployed in a quinkings formation. The quinkings, named for its arrangement resembling the 5 dots on a dice or playing card, was a fundamentally different approach to warfare. It broke down the legion into smaller, more agile units called manipuli. These manipuli were grouped into 3 lines: the Hastati, the Principes, and the Triarii. Each line was composed of 10 manipuli, each with roughly 120 men, though the Triarii manipuli were smaller. Crucially, the manipuli were not arranged in continuous line, but rather in a staggered, checkerboard pattern. This created gaps between the manipuli, allowing for greater flexibility and maneuverability. The Hastati, the youngest and most lightly armed soldiers, formed the first line. They were tasked with initiating the engagement and softening the enemy line. Behind them stood the Principes, more experienced and heavily armed, ready to exploit any weaknesses that the Hastati had created. It was the Triarii, however, the veterans of the legion and the oldest soldiers, who held the crucial reserve position. The Triarii were armed with long spears, a legacy of the phalanx, but their role had fundamentally changed. They were no longer the primary assault force, but rather a solid anchor and a final line of defense. Stationed at the rear, they were there to stabilize a faltering line, to counter a flanking maneuver, or to cover retreat. Their presence provided psychological reassurance to the younger soldiers, knowing that hardened veterans stood ready to support them. The expression, residential ad triarios redite, it has come down to the Triarii, became a proverbial phrase meaning that the situation was dire and a last, desperate effort was required. The quinkings formation allowed for a far more dynamic and adaptable style of combat. The gaps between the manipuli allowed the Roman legionaries to maneuver around obstacles, to envelop the enemy flanks, and to exploit any vulnerabilities that arose during the battle. The stagger formation provided depth, allowing the Romans to absorb pressure and to maintain a continuous flow of fresh troops into the fight. If the Hastati were pushed back, they could retreat through the gaps in the Principes line, who would then engage the enemy. And if the Principes faltered, the Triarii were there to step in and restore order. In essence, the quinkings transformed the Roman army from a static, inflexible force into a mobile, adaptable, and resilient fighting machine. The Triarii, while no longer the spirit of the attack, played a vital, strategic role in ensuring the legion's overall success. Their experience and discipline provided the backbone of the Roman army, allowing them to overcome diverse enemies and conquer vast territories. The tactical evolution from the phalanx to the quinkings was a key ingredient in Rome's rise to dominance, and the shifting role of the Triarii exemplifies this transformation. The very name, Triarii, evokes images of unwavering resolve, a final bastion of Roman strength. Their reputation, forged in the crucible of countless battles, paints them as nigh invincible warriors. But was this aura of invincibility a carefully cultivated myth, or did it reflect a tangible reality on the battlefield? This is the question we must confront to truly understand their role and eventual obsolescence. Undoubtedly, the Triarii possess qualities that made them a force to be reckoned with. Their long years of service, often spanning a decade or more, provided them with invaluable combat experience. Their armor, heavier and more protective than that of the Hastati and Principes, offered a significant advantage in close-quarters combat, and their training, rigorously focused on maintaining formation and utilizing the long asta, instilled a discipline that was the envy of many contemporary armies. Their presence on the field boosted morale, offering a tangible sense of security to younger, less experienced soldiers. The sheer sight of the Triarii holding the line could break the spirit of an enemy, knowing that they faced the most seasoned and determined of Rome's legionaries. Yet, to believe them invulnerable would be a grave error. While their equipment provided superior protection, it also came at a cost. The weight of their armor and weaponry made them less agile than the lighter troops. This lack of mobility could be a disadvantage in uneven terrain or against more nimble adversaries. Moreover, their effectiveness was predicated on maintaining formation and utilizing the asta effectively. In a chaotic melee, where formations dissolve and individual combat took precedence, the Triarii lost some of their advantage. More crucially, their role as a last line of defense, the ultima spes, the final hope, carried inherent risks. The very fact that the Triarii were deployed meant that the initial lines of Hastati and Principes had failed to hold. This scenario often implied that the Romans were already facing significant losses, and that the enemy was pressing hard. Deploying the Triarii was a gamble, a desperate measure to prevent a complete rout. While their steadfastness could often turn the tide, it was not a guaranteed solution. A determined enemy, exploiting weaknesses in the Roman line, or overwhelming them through sheer numbers, could still break through even the Triarii's defenses. Instances of this happening, though rare in Roman historiography given the emphasis on success, undoubtedly occurred and should not be disregarded. Consider the Battle of Cannae, often cited as one of Rome's greatest military disasters. While the specifics of the Triarii's involvement are debated, the overall Roman defeat underscores the fact that even the most disciplined and well-equipped soldiers could be overwhelmed by superior tactics and overwhelming numbers. Even the invincible Triarii could not save the day when the very fabric of the Roman army was unraveling. The price of engaging the Triarii often involved absorbing significant losses beforehand, meaning their success came at a high cost of the overall Roman military strength. The evolution of Roman military doctrine ultimately rendered the Triarii obsolete. As Rome expanded its territories and faced increasingly diverse enemies, the rigid mandibular structure, with its reliance on distinct troop types based on age and experience, became less effective. The introduction of the Marian reforms in the late 2nd century BC, named after the general Gaius Marius, marked a significant turning point. These reforms abolished the property requirements for military service, creating a professional, standing army composed of citizen soldiers who were equipped and trained uniformly. This new army, organized into cohorts and legions, prioritized flexibility and adaptability. The need for distinct classes of infantry, like the Hastati, Principes, and Triarii, diminished. The legionaries were now trained to fight in a more fluid and adaptable manner, equipped with a pilum and gladius, and capable of performing a wider range of combat roles. The cohortal legion offered a more versatile and responsive fighting force, capable of adapting to different terrains and enemy tactics. The Triarii, with their emphasis on static defense and their reliance on the long asta, simply did not fit into this new paradigm. Their slow, deliberate movements and their limited tactical flexibility were seen as liabilities in a more dynamic battlefield. While remnants of older organizational structures might have lingered for a time, the days of the Triarii as a distinct and essential component of the Roman army were numbered. Their gradual disappearance reflected a broader shift in Roman military thinking, a transition from a rigid, hierarchical system to a more professional and adaptable fighting force. The legacy of the Triarii, however, remained. Their example of courage, discipline, and unwavering commitment to duty continued to inspire Roman soldiers for generations to come, even as their specific role faded into the annals of history. They serve as a reminder that even the most formidable warriors are subject to the relentless forces of change and adaptation in the ever-evolving landscape of warfare. The annals of military history are replete with examples of battlefield success born from ingenuity, discipline, and the effective application of specialized units. Few exemplify this principle more powerfully than the Triarii of the Roman legions. These seasoned veterans, the backbone of the manipulative system for centuries, offer profound insight into the Roman military ethos and the constant adaptation that underpinned Rome's rise to dominance. To understand their legacy, we must delve into their origins, their role on the battlefield, and ultimately, the reasons for their eventual disappearance, a transition that signals a pivotal shift in Roman military doctrine. The Triarii emerged from the early Roman army, a citizen militia organized along class lines. Originally, they were among the wealthiest citizens, equipped and responsible for their own arms and armor. This system reflected a societal hierarchy where military service was inextricably linked to civic duty and economic status. Over time, this structure evolved into a manipulative system, a flexible and highly adaptable formation that divided the legion into three distinct lines: the Hastati, Principes, and the Triarii. The Triarii occupied the vital third line. They were the oldest, most experienced, and thus most reliable soldiers in the legion, dressed in full panoply, complete with heavy bronze armor, a large scutum shield, and the characteristic pilum javelin. Their most distinctive weapon was the asta, a long spear used for thrusting. Their presence on the battlefield was a testament to Roman resolve, a last line of defense intended to hold firm when all else failed. The role of the Triarii was far more than simply acting as a reserve force. They were a tactical anchor, a stabilizing presence in the chaos of battle. Their deployment was often a signal of dire straits. The phrase rem ad triarios redis, meaning it has come to the Triarii, became a proverbial expression signifying a desperate situation. It underscored the gravity of the moment when these veterans were called into action. It implied that the younger, more agile Hastati and Principes had failed to break the enemy, and the fate of the legion now rested on the shoulders of these seasoned warriors. The tactical doctrine surrounding the Triarii emphasized discipline and a steadfast defense. Unlike the Hastati and Principes, who engaged in more aggressive maneuvers, the Triarii were expected to hold their ground, forming a solid shield wall and repelling enemy assaults with their spears. Their presence provided a rallying point for the wavering ranks of the younger soldiers, allowing them to regroup and potentially renew the attack. They were, in essence, the embodiment of Roman resilience, a tangible manifestation of the determination to prevail against all odds. However, the very qualities that made the Triarii so effective also contributed to their eventual obsolescence. As Rome's military commitment expanded and the nature of warfare evolved, the limitations of the manipulative system, and particularly the Triarii, became increasingly apparent. The expansion of Roman citizenship and the increasing reliance on allied troops blurred the lines between the different classes within the legion. The social distinctions that had originally defined the Hastati, Principes, and Triarii began to erode. Furthermore, the changing battlefield demanded greater flexibility and adaptability. The static defensive role of the Triarii was less effective against new enemy tactics and the challenges of fighting in diverse terrains. The Marian reforms, introduced by the general Gaius Marius in the late 2nd century BC, marked a turning point. Marius abolished the property requirements for military service, opening the legions to a wider segment of the population. He also standardized equipment and training, creating a professional, standing army. This standardization meant the end of the distinct manipulative formations. The legion was reorganized into cohorts, larger and more flexible units that were better suited to the demands of long-term campaigns and increasingly complex military operations. The specialized roles of the Hastati, Principes, and Triarii were effectively eliminated, replaced by a unified fighting force trained to execute a wider range of tactical maneuvers. The disappearance of the Triarii was not simply a matter of discarding an outdated tactical unit. It signified a fundamental shift in Roman military thinking. The emphasis moved away from a rigid, class-based structure towards a more streamlined and professionalized army. This transition was driven by necessity, as Rome faced new threats from increasingly sophisticated enemies and the logistical challenges of maintaining a vast empire. The Marian reforms were revolutionary, but they also had profound social and political consequences. The professionalization of the army led to a greater reliance on generals, who could command the loyalty of their troops and wield considerable political power. This ultimately contributed to the instability of the late Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. Despite their eventual disappearance, the legacy of the Triarii endures. They stand as a symbol of Roman discipline, resilience, and the importance of experience in warfare. Their presence on the battlefield, even as a last resort, instilled confidence in their comrades and fear in their enemies. They represented the core values of the Roman Republic: duty, courage, and unwavering commitment to the state. More broadly, the story of the Triarii provides a valuable lesson about the importance of innovation and adaptation in military history. The Romans were not inherently superior warriors. Their success was largely due to their willingness to learn from their enemies, adapt their tactics, and constantly evolve their military organization. The transition from the manipular system to the cohort-based legion, though marking the end of the Triarii, was a necessary step in maintaining Rome's military dominance. The Triarii may have faded from the battlefield, but their contribution to the Roman war machine remains undeniable. They were more than just soldiers. They were a living embodiment of Roman virtues, and their story serves as a reminder that even the most formidable military forces must adapt to survive in the ever-changing landscape of warfare. Their legacy is a testament to the enduring power of discipline, experience, and the constant pursuit of innovation. The ghost of the Triarii, spear in hand, continues to whisper a timeless lesson across the centuries, reminding us that military success is not solely about brute force, but also about the intelligent application of strategy and the unwavering commitment to adaptation.